Welcome to Religion Story YouTube channel. Don't forget to like, comment and subscribe. Thank you. In a small town located by the sea, there lived a man named Andreas. Andreas was a dedicated ambulance officer. Every day, he responded to emergency calls with enthusiasm, trying to save as many lives as possible. Despite the challenges of his job, he felt proud to help others, especially in critical moments. Andreas was born and raised in a devout Christian family. From a young age, he was introduced to the teachings of the church, and his faith in Jesus Christ was unwavering in his life. He was active in church activities, volunteered at various events, and always strived to live according to the moral principles he had learned. However, Andreas' life changed drastically one unexpected night. That night, a call came into the ambulance station requiring Andreas and his partner, Lucas, to immediately head to the scene. They received information that a man had been severely injured in an accident in an area far from the city center. When they arrived at the scene, they were confronted with a terrifying sight. A man was lying on the road, his body covered in blood. Several people stood around him, but no one dared to approach. Andreas and Lucas immediately jumped out of the ambulance and rushed to the victim. After assessing the man's condition, they realized his injuries were critical. The time they had to save his life was very limited. However, despite their best efforts, the man eventually passed away on the way to the hospital. But there was something very different about this incident. When they arrived at the hospital and prepared the man's body, they discovered that he was a Muslim. A sense of curiosity and confusion arose within Andreas. As a Christian, he had often heard about Islam, but this time, being so close to the body of a Muslim, he felt a connection to something greater that he couldn't fully comprehend with logic alone. The next day, Andreas was assigned to take the man's body to his family's home. There, he met the man's wife and children. They greeted him with deep gratitude despite the atmosphere of sorrow. The family seemed calm and patient, even in the midst of their profound grief. The man's wife, wearing a hijab, spoke words that left Andreas silent. "Thank you for helping my husband in his final moments. May Allah grant you goodness." The demeanor of the family was filled with tranquility and peace, something very different from the way Andreas was used to living. They spoke about life after death, their faith that gave them strength, and the prayers that guided every step of their lives. Andreas felt a calmness in their words, something he had only ever felt in the prayers at church, but this time, it felt alive. That night, Andreas woke up from his sleep with a restless feeling. He couldn't stop thinking about the faces of the family he had just met. Their sincerity, their calmness of heart despite being in deep sorrow, continued to haunt his thoughts. He began to reflect on life, faith, and what he truly believed in. He felt an emptiness within him that he had never felt before. Even though he had been following the teachings of the church for a long time, he felt that there was something greater than just the routine of worship. He felt a peace in the teachings of Islam that he had heard from the family of the man, even though he did not fully understand it. Andreas began to seek more information about Islam. He spoke with some Muslim friends he knew, read books about the religion, and even visited the local mosque. The deeper he studied, the more questions arose in his mind. However, one thing he strongly felt was the peace that came with each step of his search. One day, after several months of searching, Andreas finally decided to meet with an imam at the mosque. They sat together, talking at length about beliefs, life, and the true meaning of faith. The imam patiently explained that Islam was not just about rules and obligations, but also about peace of heart and sincere devotion to God. After that meeting, Andreas experienced an extraordinary enlightenment. He knew that he had found his answer. On a blessed day, Andreas decided to embrace Islam, with a sincere intention to live a life that was more peaceful, full of gratitude, and dedicated to God. He then recited the Shahada, with a heart full of emotion and deep gratitude. This transition was not easy, but Andreas felt that this step was the right one for him. He felt as if a long-held burden had finally been released, and he was ready to step into a new life as a Muslim. After embracing Islam, Andreas found the peace he had been searching for all along. He continued to work as an ambulance officer, but now with a deeper perspective on life and death. Every time he transported a body, he no longer saw it as just a professional duty, but as an opportunity to reflect on life and the afterlife. Michael, who had once been a Christian, had now become Ahmad, a devout Muslim. He learned to understand and appreciate differences more, and felt that the journey of life was about seeking the truth, embracing differences, and living with sincerity. Finally, Andreas realized that his mission was not just to save lives, but also to understand and respect every person, regardless of their religious or cultural background. In this meaningful life journey, he found true peace and began a new spiritual journey. After embracing Islam, Ahmad's life, previously known as Andreas, changed in unexpected ways. His spiritual journey had just begun, and although he felt peaceful with the decision he had made, he still had to face many challenges. At first, this change made Ahmad feel awkward, especially at work. Some of his colleagues at the ambulance station began to notice the change in his demeanor. Some supported him, while others showed curiosity or even skepticism. However, Ahmad felt calm because his new faith gave him the courage to face each test with patience. In his daily life, he began to perform acts of worship, such as the 5 daily prayers, diligently. At the beginning, he struggled, especially because he had to adjust the prayer times with his busy work routine. However, with the support of a few Muslim friends he met, he began to find a way to maintain a balance between work and worship. Every time he heard the adhan, his heart was always moved to stop for a moment, even in the middle of a busy day, to perform the prayer with full devotion. His closest colleague, Lucas, who knew from the beginning that Ahmad had embraced Islam, began to be curious about the changes taking place. They had deeper conversations about their religious differences, and although Lucas did not convert to Islam, he respected his friend's decision. In one of their conversations, Lucas said, "Ahmad, I respect your journey. I know this wasn't an easy decision, but you seem more at peace now." Ahmad smiled and said, "Sometimes, we do have to go through major changes to find peace in life. And I feel closer to God now." However, the biggest challenge came from his family. His parents, who were very devout Christians, found it difficult and confusing to accept his decision. Although they knew Ahmad was a kind and loving person, they were surprised and sometimes disappointed with his choice to embrace a different religion. One day, Ahmad visited his parents. They sat together in the living room, and the atmosphere felt tense. His mother, who had always accompanied him to church, began speaking with a tone full of concern. "My child, why did you choose this path?" his mother asked with a voice full of doubt. "We always taught you to follow Jesus. What made you change like this?" Ahmad took a deep breath. "Mom, Dad, I am not turning away from the good teachings. In fact, I feel like I've found a deeper path that brings peace to my heart. Islam teaches me to know God more closely, to live with love, and to keep peace within myself." His mother was silent, then said gently, "We just want what's best for you. But if this is the decision that makes you happy, we must accept it." In his heart, Ahmad felt deeply touched. Although his parents still had many questions, he knew that family love remained, despite the differences in beliefs. One night, when Ahmad was on the ambulance, he received an emergency call. This time, he and Lucas had to head to a hospital immediately. There was a man who had just suffered a heart attack. Upon arriving at the hospital, they found the man in critical condition, and despite their best efforts, the man passed away during the journey. When they brought the body to the funeral home, Ahmad was surprised to learn that the man was a Muslim. For a moment, he stood still, feeling once again the emotions he first experienced when bringing the body of the Muslim man who had died in the accident. Ahmad stood beside the body and gazed at the man's face. A sense of gratitude and tranquility washed over him, reminding him how short life is. He remembered the teachings of Islam about the importance of living with good intentions and preparing oneself for the hereafter in a righteous way. There, in the quiet funeral home, Ahmad prayed sincerely, "O Allah, thank you for the life you have given me. Grant me strength to continue walking on your path and make every action of mine a source of goodness." As time passed, Ahmad began to feel more at ease with his decision. Although there were challenges, he felt peace in every step he took. Every time he helped others in his work, he grew more convinced that his role as an ambulance officer was a calling, a purpose greater than just a job. One day, after several months of embracing Islam, he was invited by a Muslim family to attend a Taisyakar, Thanksgiving, event at their home. The family had known him for a long time and had been very supportive of his spiritual journey. At the event, Ahmad felt completely accepted, with no sense of foreignness or difference. He felt like he was in a home filled with love and peace. From that moment on, Ahmad became even more convinced that although religion might set people apart, in the end, all humanity is one family. What matters is how we live our lives with love and maintain good relationships with others. With every step he took, he grew more certain that Islam was the path to true peace and happiness. Ahmad now lives with a heart that is more open, more accepting of differences, and more in love with life. In every prayer and step, he feels close to God, with the hope that his life is a journey to continually learn, grow, and benefit others. The years passed since Ahmad decided to embrace Islam. His life became more meaningful. He continued working as an ambulance officer, but with a deeper and calmer outlook on life. Every emergency call, every body he carried, always taught him new lessons about life and death. Ahmad increasingly felt that life wasn't just about chasing worldly pleasures, but about how to live with gratitude, love, and devotion to God. However, life doesn't always go smoothly. At the age of 45, Ahmad began to feel the physical and mental toll of his job. His once fit body started showing signs of exhaustion. His back often ached, and his breath would sometimes be short after long shifts. Despite this, he continued his work diligently, striving to help as many people as possible, even as his body grew wearier. But deep in his heart, he felt at peace. He knew that this work was his field of charity, a way for him to give benefit to others, and a way for him to continue drawing closer to God. One bright morning, while Ahmad was working, he felt a sharp pain in his chest. He tried to fight the pain and continued his duties, but the pain kept getting worse. His co-worker, Lucas, who saw his condition, quickly took him to the hospital. The diagnosis was shocking. Ahmad had suffered a heart attack. Despite the hospital's best efforts to handle his condition, Ahmad knew that his time was running out. At that moment, he felt completely calm. He reflected on his life's journey, how far he had come from being a confused Christian ambulance officer to finding peace in Islam. He felt he had lived a life full of love and meaning, despite the many tests and challenges. In his final days at the hospital, Ahmad was surrounded by loved ones. His Muslim family and friends came to offer support. They all prayed for him, hoping that he would pass away in a state of husnul khatima, a good end. Though he could no longer speak much, Ahmad's eyes were full of peace. He knew that all the trials and struggles in life were part of the fate that God had determined. He felt ready to return to his Creator. In his heart, he whispered the Shahada, a final affirmation of his faith. Allah, there is no God but you. I bear witness that Muhammad is your messenger, he whispered in a barely audible voice. When he recited the Shahada for the last time, a gentle smile appeared on his face. It was a smile of peace, the smile of a servant who had lived his life with gratitude, and was now ready to leave this transient world. Moments later, Ahmad peacefully breathed his last. In the final seconds of his life, he felt truly at peace, as though he had just released a heavy burden, ready to step into a better realm. The news of Ahmad's passing spread quickly among friends and colleagues who knew him. Many came to pay their last respects, not only as an ambulance officer, but as a human being who had inspired many with his sincerity and peace of heart. Lucas, his old friend, stood by Ahmad's body and whispered, "You gave us more than just lessons about work, Ahmad. You taught us about life, about the tranquility that comes from faith, and about how to live a life devoted to others. Ahmed's Muslim family, especially his wife who had always supported him since he embraced Islam, felt a deep sense of loss. However, they were also grateful for the opportunity to know someone so loving and dedicated. Ahmad did not leave behind a large material legacy, but his moral legacy was immense. He left an example for many people on the importance of living with sincerity, facing every challenge in life with patience, and most importantly, living a life full of love and sincerity. Ahmad was buried with dignity, accompanied by prayers from family and friends who loved him. At his grave, prayers continued to flow, hoping that Allah would grant him the best place, for his servant who passed away with full faith. As friends and family left his grave, they carried the memory of a man who had chosen to transform his life, to find peace, and ultimately to reach a good end, an end that was peaceful, full of blessings. And for those who knew Ahmad, he would not only be remembered as an ambulance officer always ready to help others, but also as someone who had found true peace, teaching everyone that life is about giving, living with gratitude, and having sincere faith, no matter the challenges that come. Welcome to Religion Story YouTube channel. Don't forget to like, comment and subscribe. Thank you. The devastation caused by the fire that struck Los Angeles, California, in the United States left behind many astonishing stories. One of them is about a pastor who eventually converted to Islam. This is the true story of a Christian pastor who frequently belittled Islamic values in his sermons. In fact, there was a time when he even burned the Qur'an as proof that Islam was the wrong religion. However, at one point, when the city of Los Angeles was ravaged by fire, this pastor discovered a miraculous life transformation through Islam. This person is named Michael. So, what's the connection to the Los Angeles fire? Michael was a respected pastor in Los Angeles, known for his powerful rhetoric in delivering his sermons. Every weekend, his church was always full of congregants inspired by his passion and conviction. He spoke firmly about the importance of maintaining the Christian faith in a world he felt was drifting further away from religious values. But behind his compelling sermons, Michael harbored a deep unease that he couldn't fully understand. This unease grew stronger as the Muslim community around his church began to grow. A small mosque, which once saw little activity, was now bustling with worshippers. The sound of the adhan, faintly heard from afar, often disturbed Michael. He began to see the growth of this Muslim community as a threat, even though they had never shown any hostility. To Michael, their presence felt like a challenge to the beliefs he held so firmly. Michael began expressing his skeptical views about Islam in his sermons, calling it something foreign and dangerous. Gradually, this turned into hatred. The turning point came one day when he heard about an expansion of the mosque, which made him even angrier. In a fit of emotion, he took a Qur'an from the church library. He burned it, feeling as though he was reaffirming his beliefs. However, when the fire died down, he felt something strange. Instead of feeling victorious, his heart grew more restless. A sense of guilt began to haunt him. His once firm voice now trembled. He felt that something was wrong within him. Especially when he passed the mosque that he saw as a threat, his heart would feel heavy. Michael couldn't shake the feeling that he had done something wrong. But instead of confronting it, he chose to ignore it and continue his routine as a pastor. January 2025 turned out to be a dark month for Los Angeles. A massive fire swept through the city, triggered by extreme weather. Michael woke up in the middle of the night to the sound of wailing sirens and a knock at the door. He had to evacuate. Outside, the scene was chaotic. People were running. All the buildings were destroyed, turned to ashes. After a few days, Michael returned to Los Angeles. He suddenly stopped, staring at something that left him stunned. From a distance, the only place that remained intact amidst the devastation was the mosque. Michael couldn't believe it, the mosque near his church stood strong without a scratch. He stood there for a while, gazing at it, his heart filled with mixed emotions. Now, at the peak of his inner struggle, Michael made a major decision after months of reflection, studying Islam, and battling his fears and doubts. He decided to take a step towards what had always felt right in his heart. That morning, Michael walked towards the An-Nur mosque. With steady steps, though not entirely free of the nervousness that haunted his mind, he found peace in the verses of the Qur'an and the warmth of Islam. Michael finally decided to embrace Islam after reciting the Shahada. After deciding to embrace Islam, Michael's journey was not immediately easy. Although he felt peace in his heart, he had to face many challenges, especially from the Christian community that had known him as a pastor. Some of his close friends and church members were shocked and felt betrayed. They couldn't understand why Michael chose a path different from the teachings he had always firmly held. However, Michael felt that the sense of peace he found in Islam was greater than the fear or pressure coming from outside. He began to study Islam more deeply, pray, and perform the acts of worship taught in the religion. Every time he stepped into the mosque, he felt a tranquility that strengthened his decision. The violation he once made by burning the Quran, although it was a highly emotional act filled with hatred at the time, became a turning point for him. He began to look for ways to make amends and seek forgiveness. Sincerely, Michael apologized to Allah and prayed for guidance and strength to live this new life better. Day by day, he grew closer to Allah and to the Muslim community, which welcomed him warmly. They supported him not with judgment, but with love and genuine acceptance. Michael felt like he had found a new family that supported him on his spiritual journey. Michael's story eventually spread through various media outlets. Many people were inspired by his life journey, especially those who had previously held skeptical or negative views toward Islam. Michael began speaking at various forums, sharing his experience and describing how strongly he felt the positive impact after embracing Islam. He also began working with various interfaith groups to build bridges of understanding and tolerance between Christian and Muslim communities. Michael realized that the path he had chosen to delve into Islam not only brought a change in his life but also opened opportunities to build peace and mutual understanding between two different religions. In the end, the fire that ravaged Los Angeles became more than just a major tragedy for the city. For Michael, it was a turning point that led him to a new life filled with hope, peace, and forgiveness. The miracle he found amidst the destruction was a gateway to a spiritual journey that led him to Islam, a journey far more meaningful and blessed than he had ever imagined before. Welcome to Religion Story YouTube channel. Don't forget to like, comment and subscribe. Thank you. In a small town located by the river, there lived a firefighter named Daniel. He was known as a tough and brave figure. Every day, he carried out his duties with high dedication, ready to tackle fires that consumed houses, forests, or other buildings. Behind his risky profession, Daniel held a firm belief: he was a Christian who believed in God and the teachings of the gospel. One very hot night, a strong wind blew, causing the fire to spread rapidly in a densely populated residential area. The firefighters rushed to the scene, and Daniel was at the front, ready with a hose and other firefighting equipment. The fire had spread everywhere, burning many buildings, while thick smoke filled the sky. One of the houses that caught fire belonged to an elderly man named Ibrahim. Ibrahim was a Muslim who always appeared calm and full of love. Despite the fact that Daniel and Ibrahim came from different backgrounds, they often exchanged greetings, even if it was just a simple hello and a smile. Ibrahim's house became the target of a huge fire, and Daniel, along with his colleagues, worked hard to save the properties around it. As the fire neared Ibrahim's house, Daniel quickly ran toward it. He heard shouting from inside the house, and without thinking, he leaped into the house that was beginning to collapse. Inside, he found Ibrahim, who was very old and weak, trying to save some valuable items. With great difficulty, Daniel managed to lift Ibrahim and carry him out. However, just as they were about to exit through the front door, a large explosion shook the house. The fire spread quickly, tearing apart the house and consuming everything around it. Daniel, who had managed to get Ibrahim out, ran away with the elderly man. As he looked back, he noticed something strange. In the midst of the raging flames, Daniel saw an object that was not burning. A book lay on the floor, appearing intact with no pages burnt. Daniel, curious, despite the very dangerous situation, decided to return to the house after ensuring Ibrahim was safe. With all the risks involved, he ran back toward the nearly destroyed house, searching for the book he had seen earlier. Amidst the still burning debris, he found the Qur'an, in an extraordinary condition. None of the book was burned or damaged. The book appeared clean and whole. Daniel was stunned. He carefully held the Qur'an, feeling an incredible strength emanating from it, as if there was something it wanted to convey to him. After the fire was extinguished, Daniel returned home with the Qur'an. He reflected throughout the night, remembering what he had seen. How could a book from a different tradition remain intact amidst the intense fire? What was the meaning behind this event? Suddenly, his heart was filled with big questions about life and his beliefs. In the following days, Daniel couldn't stop thinking about the incident. He began to learn more about the Qur'an, reading translations from various sources, and speaking with some Muslim friends he knew, including Ibrahim. They discussed many things, about Allah, about the teachings of Islam, and about the peace contained in the Qur'an. One afternoon, when Ibrahim visited Daniel's house to thank him for saving his life, Daniel felt something different within himself. He shared his feelings about the Qur'an, how it had not burned, and his awe and wonder. Ibrahim smiled gently and said, "The Qur'an is Allah's revelation that can never be destroyed, even if the whole world tries to annihilate it." Ibrahim's words touched Daniel's heart deeply. He felt a sense of peace in every word spoken. He realized that, up until then, he had only known a small part of the truth, and there was so much more he had yet to understand about the world. He felt as though there was a greater calling in his life. After months of reflection and studying the teachings of Islam, Daniel decided to take a big step in his life. In a quiet mosque, in front of an imam and several witnesses, Daniel recited the 2 shahadas with full conviction. He bore witness that there is no God but Allah, and that Muhammad is his messenger. For Daniel, this decision was not made lightly. However, he felt peace and certainty that he was following the right path. The strength he felt from the Qur'an, which remained intact amidst the raging fire, gave him deep conviction that he had found something greater than anything he had ever known. From that moment on, Daniel became a devout Muslim, and his life changed in ways he never could have imagined. He felt that God, through that extraordinary event, had shown him the true path, the path to true peace. Now, he was not only a firefighter who fought fires but also a seeker of truth, striving to guide others toward the light of Allah. After embracing Islam, Daniel's life truly changed. Although he felt a deep peace in his heart, he knew that his spiritual journey had just begun. The decision to embrace Islam not only changed his beliefs but also tested his social relationships with friends and family. Some of his closest people, especially his Christian friends whom he had always considered companions, were shocked and even disappointed. For them, Daniel's decision was something hard to accept, and many wondered what had caused such a drastic change in him. However, Daniel did not feel the slightest doubt. He understood that every spiritual journey is personal and often brings challenges. In his heart, he believed that what he had seen and felt were clear signs from God. The intact Quran in the midst of the fire not only became a symbol for him but also a reminder that Allah always protects his followers, no matter how great the trials they face. Daniel became more active in studying Islamic teachings. He read more tafsir books to understand the Quran more deeply and attended religious studies at the local mosque. With every lesson, he felt closer to Allah, and his faith grew stronger. He also deepened his relationship with the Muslim community, sharing stories and learning from others' experiences. During this process, Ibrahim, the man he had saved from the fire, became a very valuable friend. Ibrahim not only became a companion but also a teacher who patiently guided Daniel in understanding deeper aspects of Islamic teachings. Days went by, and Daniel began to feel a greater peace in his life. Although there were challenges, such as explaining his decision to his family, he felt that every step he took towards Islam was a step towards true happiness. He felt calmer, wiser, and more able to control his emotions, thanks to the teachings he had learned. On the other hand, an interesting event occurred in the city where Daniel lived. The large fire that had occurred a few months earlier began to be a topic of conversation among the community. Many people were shocked and amazed by Daniel's story of saving Ibrahim from the flames. However, what was even more surprising was the story of the intact Qur'an. Some people began to visit the mosque to ask more about Islam, curious about the story. Many were amazed by the fact that a holy book could remain intact in the midst of such a powerful fire. The news began to spread, and many people started to rethink their beliefs and search for the truth. One of those moved by the story was a man named Johann, an old friend of Daniel's who had once been a fellow firefighter. Johann, who was known to be skeptical about anything related to religion, became curious about what had happened to Daniel. He couldn't understand why a friend who had been so firm in his Christian faith would turn to Islam. One day, Johann decided to visit Daniel at his home. "Daniel, what really happened?" Johann asked cautiously. "I still can't understand why you chose this path." Daniel looked at Johann with great patience. He knew that his friend just wanted to understand more deeply, not simply judge without knowing anything. Calmly, Daniel began to tell the story of his spiritual journey since the fire, about the Quran that remained intact even though the entire house had burned down, and how he felt after learning about the teachings of Islam. He also shared how Ibrahim, who had become like family, helped him open his heart to accept a broader truth. Johann listened intently. Although still feeling doubtful, he couldn't ignore the sincerity reflected in Daniel's eyes. He could see that the change in his friend wasn't a decision made lightly, but rather a long journey filled with searching and understanding. "I don't know much about Islam," Johann finally said, "but I see the peace you have now. I don't know if I could make such a decision, but I respect your choice." Daniel smiled, feeling glad at Johann's response. "I don't expect you to take the same path," Daniel replied. "What matters is that we respect each other, and I want you to know that I've never become a worse person. In fact, I feel better and more at peace." The conversation paved the way for a better relationship between Daniel and Johann. They remained friends, despite having different understandings of religion. Johann eventually became more open to learning about Islam, and although he hadn't decided to become Muslim, he began to appreciate the religion he had never understood before. Meanwhile, Daniel became more active in the Muslim community. He began inviting more people to the mosque, talking about his spiritual experiences, and giving real-life examples of how Islam teaches peace, compassion, and forgiveness. His story about the Quran remaining intact in the midst of the fire became a symbol that inspired many to delve deeper into the teachings of Islam. Daniel also continued to remember Ibrahim's message that he always held dear in his life: the Quran is the revelation of Allah that will never be destroyed, even if the whole world tries to annihilate it. He felt that every step he took after the fire was a step toward a greater search for truth, and he would not stop until he felt truly close to the Creator. Every time he faced challenges, Daniel remembered the book that remained intact amidst the flames. It was a reminder that in life, there are things greater than our limited understanding. A spiritual journey full of mysteries and secrets, which can only be understood with a heart willing to search for and accept the truth. As time passed, Daniel's spiritual journey grew stronger. Although the outside world continued to question his decision to embrace Islam, his heart remained steadfast. He felt that he had found a path closer to Allah, and the peace he felt only reinforced his faith. Every time he spoke with people who were still doubtful or even judgmental, he shared the story of the fire, about how the Quran remained intact amidst the blaze that consumed everything. He spoke with sincerity and patience, trying to help others feel the peace he had found. However, despite facing many challenges, there was one thing that strengthened his resolve even more. It was the courage of Ibrahim, the man he had once saved, who always supported him. Ibrahim was not just a friend, but also a mentor who patiently guided Daniel in understanding Islam more deeply. From Ibrahim, Daniel learned a lot about the meaning of patience, sincerity, and selflessness in life. One day, Ibrahim invited Daniel to attend a large event at the mosque. The event was held to celebrate diversity and peace among different faiths. There, Daniel met people from various backgrounds, Christians, Muslims, Hindus, and many others, who spoke about the importance of mutual respect and living together in peace. Daniel was deeply moved, realizing that his spiritual journey was not just for himself, but also to share peace with others. That day, after the event ended, Ibrahim invited Daniel to sit together in a corner of the mosque. Ibrahim looked at Daniel with pride and said, "You've been on an incredible journey, Daniel. You've not only found the truth for yourself, but also shared peace with others. You are an example that Islam teaches compassion, and that's what the world needs." Daniel smiled, his eyes misty. "I didn't know this journey would bring me this far, Ibrahim. All of this happened because of one unexpected event, the Qur'an that remained intact amidst the fire. Since then, I've felt like something greater has been calling me." Ibrahim nodded. That's how Allah works. Sometimes, we don't know why something happens, but we just need to trust it and follow the path shown to us. A year after the fire, Daniel began to feel a major change in his life. He was not only a devout Muslim, but also someone who could inspire many people. The community around him, which had once been skeptical of his decision, now began to see positive changes in him. Daniel began holding talks and speaking on various occasions, sharing his story about Islam, and the importance of finding peace in the heart. Daniel's story became famous in the city, not only because of the great fire that shook the town, but because of the strength of faith he found afterward. Many people came to hear his story and learn from him. Some of them even decided to learn more about Islam, while others became more open to different beliefs. In the end, Daniel realized that this journey was not just about him. It was about how a person, with an open heart, could find the truth and bring peace to the world around them. Although the path he took was not easy, Daniel felt that he was never alone. He always felt close to Allah, and his guidance came through various unexpected events. A few years later, on a bright sunny day, Daniel stood in front of the mosque, watching people coming and going with enthusiasm. He paused for a moment and reflected on the events that had brought him to this point. The great fire that once shook his life had now become the starting point of a spiritual journey that had brought about many changes, not just for him, but also for many people around him. Daniel felt that he had found his purpose in life, to be an instrument of Allah in spreading peace, to bridge differences, and to show that, although we come from different backgrounds, we can all understand and love one another sincerely. And for Daniel, this was the true meaning of a life full of light and hope. Welcome to Religion Story YouTube channel. Don't forget to like, comment and subscribe. Thank you. The man's name is Arya, a commercial pilot with a brilliant career. He is known for being brave, confident, and highly valuing professionalism in his work. Although his life seems perfect, deep inside, Arya feels something is missing. He often reflects on the purpose of life and the existence of God, but has never truly sought answers. One morning, Arya went on a routine flight. However, midway through the journey, the plane he was piloting experienced a severe engine failure. The navigation system failed, and the plane started free-falling. Within seconds, he felt a sensation he had never experienced before: fear, panic, and the realization that he might soon die. As the plane approached the ground, Arya could only pray, even though he didn't know to whom he was praying. He felt small in the face of nature's power and could no longer rely on his knowledge and skills. But strangely, just as the plane was about to hit the ground, the rescue team managed to save him just in time before the plane completely crashed. Arya survived, albeit with serious injuries. While being treated in the hospital, Arya reflected on what had just happened. He wondered, why did I survive? What is the meaning of all this? At that time, a doctor, a Muslim man, was taking care of him. The doctor was very patient and gentle in his speech. One day, when Arya began to open up, the doctor shared stories of life, faith, and how Allah always provides a path for those who seek the truth. Arya felt something different in the doctor's words. He felt intrigued and wanted to know more. In his solitude, Arya began reading about Islam, delving deeper into the teachings the doctor had shared. Gradually, his heart opened. He felt that he had found the answers to the questions that had long haunted him. One night, after months of spiritual searching, Arya decided to embrace Islam. He sincerely recited the 2 sentences of the Shahada, realizing that the plane crash was a turning point in his life. He felt that Allah had guided him, giving him a second chance to live a life with a nobler purpose. Arya returned to the world of aviation, but now with a different perspective. He was no longer just a pilot, but also a Muslim who was grateful for his life. He became calmer, more patient, and increasingly appreciated every moment given to him. Every time he took to the skies, Arya reminded himself that life is only temporary, and that fate lies in the hands of Allah. Arya's story is about how Allah gives guidance and enlightenment to whomever He wills, even in the most critical situations. The crash was not the end, but rather the beginning of a more meaningful spiritual journey. After embracing Islam, Arya felt that his life had changed profoundly. Although he returned to flying as a pilot, his heart and mind were now filled with spiritual awareness. Every day, he carried out his routine with a greater sense of gratitude, and he began to understand that life is not only about achieving personal or material goals, but also about benefiting others and drawing closer to Allah. Arya was no longer solely focused on worldly success. In every flight, he felt more at peace, knowing that life and death were in Allah's hands. He began living with patience and tranquility, no longer rushing to achieve everything. Where he once tried to solve problems with his own strength, now he often left the outcome to Allah's will, praying and striving to do his best. Although the transition was not easy, Arya began to feel peace in his new life. He no longer felt anxious or fearful of things beyond his control. When faced with difficult situations in the plane, for instance, he felt more prepared to remain calm and thoughtful. He also began to engage in Dawah, Islamic preaching, spreading the teachings of Islam to his colleagues, especially fellow pilots and flight crew. One day, on an occasion, Arya spoke to a colleague who was going through a tough time in life. The colleague felt pressured by the burdens of work and personal life that were out of balance. Arya patiently listened to his complaints, then invited him to talk about his newfound faith. He explained how Islam provided peace and clear guidance in life. "There are times in our lives that feel very dark," said Arya. "But with faith, we are given light to guide our path. We are not alone in facing these challenges. Allah is always there to help us, as long as we surrender and strive." The colleague was interested and wanted to learn more about Islam. Arya felt grateful to be able to share the guidance with others, because for him, every opportunity to tell others about the path to truth was an incredible blessing. However, Arya did not force it, knowing that everyone would find their own path in their own time. In his personal life, Arya also began to commit to being closer to his family. He realized how important it was to maintain good relationships with loved ones. He became a more attentive husband and a loving father, always striving to set a good example. Every night, after returning from work, he made time to worship together with his family, teaching his children about the important values of faith for their lives. Arya's life was no longer just about avoiding death or pursuing worldly success. Now, every step he took was filled with meaning and a higher purpose. Even though he still had to fly far from home, he felt closer to Allah and more at peace with himself. Every time he looked at the vast sky from inside the plane, he felt even more certain that this journey of life was part of a greater destiny, one that could only be understood through faith. On every occasion, Arya never forgot to be grateful for the second chance given to him by Allah. The plane crash that once threatened his life was now a reminder of the immense mercy he had received, and how Allah's guidance came in unexpected ways. He knew that his life was a gift, and he would live each day with the awareness that the true purpose of life was to draw closer to Him and benefit others. Time passed, and Arya continued to live his new life as a steadfast Muslim. He felt as though his life had found its path, even though his spiritual journey was still ongoing. With every step, he learned to be more patient, more trusting in Allah, and more sincere in facing every destiny that came his way. One day, after years of being a pilot and dedicating himself to his family, Arya had the opportunity to fly to a very distant destination. This was his final flight before retirement, an emotional journey for him. While above the clouds, with the plane flying high and steady, Arya looked out the window and reflected on his life's journey. He remembered the plane crash that nearly took his life, which led him to the guidance he had been seeking all along. He felt so grateful, because through that accident, he was introduced to the religion that brought him peace and gave him a clear purpose in life. I have found peace in every breath I take, Arya thought, and he knew this was not the end, but the beginning of a much longer journey, one that would continue even after he left this world. Arya felt very calm. He knew that life in this world was only temporary. When the plane finally landed safely, he felt as though he had completed the mission given to him by God. His final flight was not just about reaching a physical destination, but also a symbol of a greater spiritual achievement, accepting God's destiny, being grateful for everything given, and living a meaningful life. After retiring, Arya decided to spend more time with his family and engage in missionary activities. He actively shared his story with people who were new to Islam, especially those facing life's challenges. He wanted to convey the message that, no matter how tough the trials may be, there is always a path to peace if we seek it with a sincere heart. In the end, Arya left this world with a sense of peace. He passed away in faith, leaving a legacy far greater than worldly achievements, sincerity, patience, and his closeness to Allah, which became an inspiration for many. The plane crash that almost took his life became the starting point of his spiritual journey, leading him to a more meaningful life. And whenever people remembered him, they didn't just recall him as a skilled pilot, but as a sincere Muslim who lived a life full of gratitude and hope for the life after death.